there is not a piece of legislation that expands access to gun that we would support. So I just feel like it's fair to put that on the table. Everyone's entitled to their positions. Of course, we support the Second Amendment, people having Second Amendment rights, but forgive us for that. And I can give you some statistics on why that's so. I went back to Representative Chris Murphy, a U.S. Congressman that represents Newton, Sandy Hook area. An article he wrote one time, it just helped me frame it in my head. He said, I'm paraphrasing him, but he said, there's not much controversy around sensible steps that can reduce gun violence. Polling confirms that overwhelmingly Americans support sensible measures, and scores of research confirm that these interventions work to a stunning degree. That's indisputable on many levels. What you think about those things may be in dispute, but research confirms these things. I think what brings us all here today, or many of us, I'm not assuming that everyone in the room agrees, is our failure to lead on one of the most basic human desires, and that's public safety. We're all here today, many of us here, we know what works to protect people from gun violence, and in Iowa, what's frustrating is it feels like we're moving in exactly the opposite direction. As was mentioned, there's a constitutional amendment with strict scrutiny language. Big concern. Maybe if we just mirrored the Constitution, it wouldn't be such a big concern. Guns on campuses. There's a legislation that was to prohibit, legislation to expand access at workplaces and at public schools, and the legislators supporting those talked about the inconvenience to gun owners if you had to drop off your kid at school and couldn't keep your weapon in your car. The level of gun violence in our society, it's indisputable that it is one uniquely American, and it's threatening public safety. I feel like as we become, normalized, as we normalize to mass shootings, to daily violence and crimes that take place and take people's lives in every community in America and in homes with intimate partner violence become normal, is you can be for gun rights, and you can recognize that reasonable efforts to protect public safety are okay. You can hold both those things. And I think we have to keep making this point, and it feels tiresome, but it's important to call people in and call people and say that there's a lot of things that we can disagree, but speak to the values, the same values that some people feel safer carrying a gun. They feel it makes them safer. Well, sometimes we have to acknowledge that when you have that gun and you bring it to school or you bring it to work, it makes me feel less safe. And a wonderful person came and testified, and I can't give credit because I can't remember who it was that said at one of these subcommittees hearings, it's like, I respect your right to own guns, but the inconvenience one hurts when you say that, because she was a teacher and she said it's pretty inconvenient when we have to lock down a school and send 450 kids into the community because someone has a gun at that school. So I think there's a way we balance our civil rights all the time in America. We balance our civil rights when we go, to an airport after 9/11. It's not very fun, the long lines at the airport, to go through an airport, but we've agreed as a society that it will make us safer to do that. And I guess it's just like, guns shouldn't be the exception here, and there's no reason for that. And so being mindful that maybe people do feel fear, remind them of the fear that we all feel in a way that invites conversation. 2/3 of gun deaths in America are suicides. So far, in former guns killed men overall in America. More people die every day in communities and regular crimes in communities in our cities and towns than mass shootings. But what, it doesn't diminish any of these things, and except when it comes to domestic violence, it's totally opposite. That's where in instances of domestic violence, women and children are by far, women in a home where there's domestic violence, if there's a gun present, 5 times more likely to be killed. Half of all female homicides in this country are because of guns. It's the weapon of choice. In domestic violence incidences, if there is a gun present, 70% of those bystanders that are killed are with a gun. There were, through September 2019 of last year, there were 11 murders attributed to gun violence. 6 of 8 of the women killed were killed by guns. Three of the people killed, 2 were children, 1 was a friend. And sadly not counted as a murder, but in those instances, 3 of the abusive people committed suicide. So of 14 deaths in 9 months of 2019 that occurred in Iowa, 12 of 14 were due to guns. And so as frustrating as it is, I feel like what both of you are saying too is we do need all of us. We need discussion on this. It's not fair the way the debate is going in the sense of this elevated fear. To me, it doesn't feel like gun rights or access to guns are threatened in Iowa. None of these are single issue problems. It's cultural problems. And there are some shared values that can move us forward, and acknowledging those and accepting that, balancing individual rights with public safety, it's not on the wrong side of morality there.